Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to another video. Today, with you all having really enjoyed that Shao video, talking about his rise and fall in the new era, I thought that we could tackle yet another beloved character, one that is incredibly near and dear to me, as he is my favourite from the 3D trilogy, the cleric of chaos, and now titan of anarchy, Havik. But just before we do begin, I do want to say massive thank you again for all of the recent love and support for the content. I really do appreciate it here, and please do know it definitely doesn't go unnoticed. So, with that said, just before we do start, I'd of course as always super appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help benefit the channel in the algorithm. And hey, if you're enjoying these sorts of videos, please do feel free to subscribe for more content. Anywho, let's dive into things. Now, Havik is a very peculiar character in the MK mythos, as he originally derives from that of the Chaos Realm, something introduced into that of the 3D trilogy of games. In fact, it was during this time period where there was a massive shift in terms of narrative, tone, and cast. Because to usher in this new age, the series started to drift away beyond the tournament format, and began to focus on enriching its world and the universe of Mortal Kombat, while simultaneously providing a new cast and world that introduced realms beyond Outworld, the Netherrealm, and Edenia. Havik is a direct byproduct of such a change. Having formed from the Chaos Realm itself, he was part of the ever-expansive design philosophy, showing that there was way more to it beyond what we had seen. The 3D era did a lot, but it was a bit of a double-edged sword here, as whilst they were able to implement incredible ideas, it did often come at the expense of actual character building, as many of those that were introduced would fall to the wayside for future installments. And of course, with the ever-progressive nature of games, cycling out new and old ideas, there's tragically a lot of characters from this time period that were never given a chance to shine beyond their design, as even with the implementation of the conquest mode, there was only ever a set designated amount of time and missions with those characters, so a lot of pressure of it was kind of shouldered on the arcade ladder ending, as it would be what ultimately served as their main form of storytelling. It's an unfortunate crux that comes from this time period, as it did lead a lot of untapped potential on the cutting room floor. Now, beyond this, there was always the possibility that Mortal Kombat was kind of hindered by Midway, as around this time they suffered from a lot of financial strife, and of course, as we know, it did lead to their bankruptcy. So there's always the possibility that this may have had an impact on the development, especially in terms of budget. Now, this isn't supposed to be some free-flying jab at the 3D era, because for all of its faults, the 3D games have done wonders in terms of world building, with its echoes and ripples being felt in the reboot trilogy. So, with all of that said, how does this pertain to that of Havik? Because in the grand calculus of Mortal Kombat as a whole, he was a pretty minor character, right? Well, yeah, you would be correct. Havik would be one of the many characters kind of left uncooked here. But here's the thing, and I think many of us can relate to this. That was kind of the inherent flawed beauty of that trilogy, because everyone that's come away knowing of it, at the very least, has one character that they thought was cool. For some, it may have been Kenshi, the blind swordsman. For others, it was the master of combat, Shigenko. But for me personally, the character that I walked away with that made the biggest impression on me was Havik. Even with lore cast aside, just from a visual perspective, Havik is unlike anyone else on the roster, with a literal mangled face and a horrific moveset that really embodies that chaotic nature of his home. Havik really felt like the antithesis of something truly bred different for the series. Plus, I don't know if it was my angsty teen edgelord brain, but in terms of design, he was just so fucking unique and cool. And I think that's always been the monkey's paw of the 3D era, because as cool as they are and as great as they look, many of them are underdeveloped, with their designs being more iconic than their character. So you can only imagine the hype and glee I felt when he was introduced into the MKX comic book line. This time, no longer but a mere side character, but instead the main antagonist of the series. One who meticulously worked from the shadows, weaponizing the Kamidogu daggers through the infectious blood code. I think that this very brief stint did wonders for Havik's character, as it had turned what many may have conceived as a wild, wacky character into a very formidable threat. A mastermind who manipulated his way into power. And I also think this was a great gateway to him, because if you were new to the universe or just introduced to the franchise from 9 onwards, then this would have been your first exposure to the character. So I definitely do think that he really benefited in the reboot trilogy, as it opened him up to a newer audience, and also allowed him to show off the potential he presented. Whilst, yes, the comics have since been sadly retconned, I still think it did have its desired effect of introducing him to a newer section of fans. And as someone who's been a long-time fan of the character, it was great to see him be reintroduced in this manner. So once they revealed that trailer for Mortal Kombat 1, I was 100% on board. And it was amazing to finally see him in a modern day game, 17 years later. But little did I know of the monkey's paw that was being dealt. Whilst he looks like Havik, and definitely plays how you would imagine, throughout the game's story mode, we come to learn that there is far more going on with him than just being a cleric of chaos. Because, well, he actually looks perfectly fine here. From an origin perspective, he's completely different here, now deriving from the Order Realm, as the Chaos Realm is currently yet to exist. Even with that in mind, however, Havik still embodies some of the values of his older self, as he holds a firm disdain against Saido's cruel regime, believing that the only way it can be saved is if he becomes an anarchist to take down its tyranny. Now, on paper, this doesn't sound like an entirely bad idea. It's anything but Havik, but it does feel like it sets up a really interesting idea of how the Order Realm may be transformed into that of the Chaos Realm. It plants some interesting ideas and propositions moving forward, but what we get in game is far more vanilla. In terms of characterization, we don't really get to have enough time with him to sympathize with his cause. We get what he wants to do, but we never come to know, see, or learn that much with this Saido. Thus, the flooding we see, whilst devastating, isn't something we feel quite attached to. So from a story perspective, it's pretty hard to relate to him, simply because we don't spend enough time with his character to understand him. This was one of the somewhat added benefits of the X comic book line, as its style of storytelling is very broad in scope. I will say, I do kind of like the idea of how he gets his face, but it doesn't feel like something that's kind of earned, more so something that just happens. It's not entirely terrible, mind you, because on paper, the idea of Scorpion being the one to permanently maim him is actually a pretty interesting concept. But now knowing through intros that he can actually regenerate his face, but actively chooses not, kind of undermines this moment. I know it's to become a symbol, but I don't really think that works for this character. I'll be touching on that in a bit. I think what doesn't really benefit Havik here is that he's kind of framed as this powerful resistance leader, but it isn't reflected in game. He doesn't retain that kind of presence, awe, or threat throughout the entire story. You see, what I mean is that there are certain instances or prerequisites that can both set up a character while simultaneously protecting them. A good example here is actually Ermac. He's nigh unstoppable when we're first introduced to him. He manhandles everyone, and you never kind of doubt his strength. It's only until he's impaled by Sento, to which the fiber of his being is disrupted, allowing him to be defeated throughout the game's story. That to me makes sense going forward. Havik, on the other hand, is anything but that. Thus, his cannon fodder-like nature is understandable, but after 17 years of waiting, I can't lie, it kinda sucks. Along with this, I don't think it helps that, well, this isn't Havik. Not really. For those blessed with naivety, we do learn through some intros that Havik isn't just different in nature, but a completely different individual, as he is actually Dairo. Yes, that Dairo.
God, why?
Look, I'm all for reintroducing and reinventing characters for the modern era. Redo them from the ground up if need be, but I don't think this is the direction they should have gone in. In many ways, it's quite smart to interject a mostly underdeveloped character under a new mantle. But here's the thing, Havik has never been a mantle or a title. He's an actual character with his own personality, home, and origin. He's not designed to be an idea. Thus, it kind of throws us into a bit of a whirlwind of just how much of what we see here is actually Havik, and how much is influenced by Dairo of the past timeline. We have a little bit of an identity crisis here. So much like the Shao video, how do we fix this? Well, easy. We kill him. No, I'm serious, we actually do that. Here's the thing, by the end of the game's story, there are two Haviks that currently exist. One that is the Dairo counterpart, and the other being the Titan variant. In my opinion, I'd find it very poetic if the Titan version confronted his counterpart. Keep in mind that this Havik is probably the one from an actual Chaos realm, so upon seeing his full self, I would imagine that he would destroy him. Not out of sheer hate, but for Havik's name to be sullied by that of the Order realm is something I can't see him standing for. He is chaos incarnate into that of a singular being, one that has actively opposed the Order realm, so to find a version of himself that originates from it would probably disgust him up to a certain extent. And considering that the Chaos Realm itself doesn't exist here, and that all he did was simply flood Saido, not turn it into an anarchist utopia, I could see him being quite ashamed of his mortal counterpart. Narratively, I do think that this helps elevate Titan Havik, as one of the more infamous elements of the current Havik is his incredible ability to regenerate. So for his Titan half to completely surpass his regenerative abilities would be a great exhibition of strength and power with what he's capable of. From a fan perspective, I also do think that this kind of benefits everyone, especially older Legacy fans, as we get a more accurate depiction of the character, one that's faithful to his original self. Plus, it could effectively serve as a really smart bait and switch, as we knew that Havik was going to be in the base game, but we didn't know that he was being set up as the next big bad for the DLC. As for how I'd want to see that story go, honestly, right now, as of making this video, it's way too hard to say, as we don't have a trailer to kind of give us an idea of what's going on. But I do generally think this is the direction that Havik should be going in, as he is a phenomenally cool character. But I think the biggest issue with him right now, especially, is trying to turn him into an idea when there is an already pre-established character. So, with that said everyone, what are your own current thoughts on Havik here? Do you like what's being done with him in the new era? Do you like his Titan counterhalf? And what would you like to see him do in the big expansion? Please do comment down below, as I'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, keep an eye out for the History of Havik episode in a few days, because you guys absolutely smashed that character pool, my god. But yeah guys, for now, that's been everything for me. Take care, I'll catch you all soon.